Okay, let's talk about, so we had some good side conversation about once you find the house, how do you know how much you can offer on the house? So let's jump into, we have about 20 minutes to finish this before we're going to want to eat something. We can still talk over lunch, and then we're going to head out by 12:30. We're supposed to meet at the first house at 12:30. I know, let's talk fast. Okay, I'm gonna like make this way simpler than I wrote it out. So here's my, and at the highest level, you don't need your entire budget all figured out before you make the offer on the house. You can work through those, and most important is that you get the house under contract. So like I know that you guys are making offers on houses, and it is a little bit frustrating in the beginning because it's like you get so excited and then you make an offer and then they don't respond, or so it's helpful to have what I call the max allowable offer. It's not going to be necessarily where you're going to start, but you can, if you can calculate that ahead of time and have that in your mind, then you're not going to overspend on a house. And this house I probably overspent on because I was emotionally attached to it. I saw the horses in the back and I'm like, oh, it's my dream. I can wake up and have breakfast with the horses. So I probably could have spent $20,000 less on this house. Because I came in with the mindset of the owner instead of the mindset of the investor. You know, so it's a different mindset. This house, they had it listed for $120,000. Totally gutted. I mean, there was a flood and there was mold and it was really bad. But you had to sign a disclosure and you could not go into it without, like, it was the worst I've ever seen of the disclosures. And so nobody would go into it. So what they did is they came in, they remediated all the mold so that you could go into it. And I can't remember, what did we pay for this? 150? 175. See, I think I could have probably gotten it for 150. But that's stupid. I got emotional. Keep the emotions out. Okay, so let's talk about estimating the repairs in a house. So I have two different, I call them the cutie houses. And that means a quick turn.
The cookie cutters.
Things that are easy to fix. Like what you guys are saying, you don't want to get in and have to do remediation in your first house and gut and have all of this stuff. Like get into a house that you can paint it and do some basic cosmetic things. So quick turn houses, you're gonna paint every house. Maybe not all of them on the outside, but on the inside you need to paint them. So that's gonna be an assumption. 90% of the time you're going to have to do the floors. If it's hardwood floors, then those are nice, but if you're going to get a cheaper house, they're probably trashed. So you at least need to refinish them. That almost costs as much as brand new ones, or even nicer carpet. Hardwood floors right now it's going to sell for more. So if you can keep the hardwood floors, that's better. For rental, always hardwood floors. That's going to be so much easier. We had telling you guys about my first and only eviction, like actually full eviction, where you had to put their stuff on the curb, which is ridiculous that anybody would let it get that far. And they've been told so many times, the cops have come to, the sheriff has come to their house so many times.
Emotional
telling them. I know, that's what I told them. Keep the damn emotions out of it. So, of all the places, I just gotten back from Peru opening up the orphanage, and I find out that we've got this guy that we're going through the eviction process, and then Jeff tells me he's from Peru, and I'm like, oh, it's a sign from God. I'm here to save him. No, not so much. So I went there, and I went there actually because he was supposed to be out. I went there to refresh the place. I open the door, and I walk in. His kids are watching TV. I lost it. Like, I have a not very nice side. And thank God he didn't understand very much English, because if he did, the things that I said to him were not good. Again, don't get into property management. Or do it and really do it and love it, but I don't love it. Okay, what else do we have? So basically when we're talking about, painting, floor, you're gonna do some landscaping. Kitchens, if you have to replace cabinets, it might seem like a big deal. It's really not that big of a deal. So it's usually worth it. So even just on these quick turn ones, assume there's a little bit of kitchen work, assume there's a little bit of bathroom work. But it's not, you're not opening up a bunch of walls. So then the other ones, these are what I call my aching gut. So these are ones that, you're some level of gutting the house. So So in addition, all of this is going to be on pretty much all of the houses. You're going to do something to all of that. Here you're talking about electrical, plumbing, HVAC. What else are big ones? Roof, thank you. Garages too. It seems like a lot of these older houses, like or holes in the roof. So it's always better to sell a house with a garage. Sometimes there's not a garage and you need to put a garage in. That's everything, I think. What are the other big ones? Roof siding. If you've got to do siding.
Windows?
Well, see, it's like, tell me that's, windows are my biggest pain in the butt about, like, I try to block them out of my head.
They're expensive.
They're crazy expensive, and even worse.
You have a window guy.
You know a window guy?
He's awesome.
Really?
Oh,
Is
I
he cheap?
need him. Good.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Window in our kitchen.
Yeah, his name's Steve Bell. He's unbelievable.
I'm gonna write that
Commercial,
down.
residential.
Windows,
He's
Steve
gonna be my
Bell.
project manager, so.
Awesome.
Unless they keep him so busy with windows.
Sorry. But you know that's the value of having a group like this is we all know somebody who will be awesome. Either we know them or we know somebody who knows them. And the reality is, even if we're doing windows, we could all keep somebody busy and still have access to them.
Mhm.
You know, it's a 1 or 2 day job. So it's something that is an invaluable contact to have to share with people. Oh, I hate windows. Windows are so expensive, and then you got to wrap them. Sometimes you got to do things with the siding. The worst, and you guys will know depending on where you're doing houses, know if you're working in a historic area, the bane of my existence for
Because
the
it's
last 4
exterior,
months.
isn't it?
It has to be, you have to put the windows in, and most of them are you know, if the house is 100 years old, the windows aren't going to work if they're original. And so that's one of the things that I loved about Liberty is we're not replacing the windows. Because if we had to replace the windows on that house, that would have been a deal breaker for me because of the cost of it.
You may also have structural fixes
On that one?
on my aching gut.
Oh,
Fixed.
yes. Yeah, anything.
Joists,
yeah.
flooring.
Actually, I will say that for the most part, I won't touch it if there's structural issues.
What about wet basements?
If you can.
You've already given me your advice.
You know what? I'm gonna put a little squiggly, and
Ah,
these are some of the really consider if you want to do it.
Well, there was one other thing with that, what basements, it determines how it's listed as a basement or not. These
Yeah.
houses some of these houses we look at are cellars.
right.
There is a huge difference between a basement and a cellar.
Oh, totally. You get squatters in cellars, and they burn down your house.
But they don't call them cellars anymore.
No,
Right.
no.
It's like an eaves trough.
If-
How did it become a gutter?
External access basement.
Yeah.
Right,
yes.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
But
it's-
there are rooms in these external access basements now sometimes.
But a lot of the cellars don't even
They're a
have
garden
walls.
apartment.
Just-
Do you have somebody hired that tells, or like helps
Yes.
you kind of, okay. that's-
I didn't used to. So when I started it, I would GC. Look at my husband's
It was
laughing.
nuts. Because I am like, it's, for some of you guys that know me, I'm the least handy person out there.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, you know, I can swing a stick and nunchucks.
But not a
But
hammer.
give me a hammer and I'll miss the nail. It's really bizarre. Yeah, I mean, it was some of the things that I would see her do, because it's like, you know, our roles are very clearly defined in what we do. Like this part that she's talking about,
He doesn't
I
know
have
anything about any
zero
of it.
interest in doing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Zero.
But
Yeah,
again,
that's-
you know
that works
your
out.
personality
Right.
and what you love to do.
So when she started doing this, I mean, you were GCing it yourself.
I was GCing everything
you know,
myself.
So,
Did you get a license?
You don't have to.
No, if it's your own house, you don't have to.
Oh, even if you're not going to occupy?
Nope.
Then you're liable.
State of Illinois to be
Yeah.
Right.
The
state of
same.
Illinois to be a general contractor, you print a business card.
Really?
And yeah, I mean,
Well, we have to do that.
managing the project, you know, I wasn't really a general contractor. I was just telling people what to do.
Right,
know,
you're a
so
project manager.
I was a project manager or whatever. Yeah, I was the one doing all this stuff and telling other people to do other stuff.
So you've got roof, I'm assuming that's shingles and roof line. Is there a squiggly line roof, like sagging roof?
I had a house that the roof looked perfect. Well, not perfect. It needed to be replaced, but didn't look so bad. But then we got up in the attic and we saw that there was fire damage. We had to tear literally, like, the whole roof. It was nothing. So when we look at each of these areas, that's part of the consideration. If you can find one that's not sagging, then yeah, avoid anything sagging. You know, that's a good rule in life.
But
If
then you
it's
could take a
sagging-
look at it too, because depending on the amount of damage up there, it might be,
Right.
replacing a roof joist or something
yeah,
like
it
that.
could
Could
be a
just be
simple-
two joists.
yeah.
If you get up there and look at it.
I'm not so concerned about sagging roofs as I am about structural issues,
Like foundation.
foundation issues. If there's again, I bought houses like this. You know, our house that we have right now in Channing, it's a little bit like this, but you know, the size of the house and the price is gonna. The person who's buying that house is not the $1 million
That's not
buyer,
much.
and they're a little bit okay with that.
I'm gonna throw something in here. I get calls every once in a while from house flippers to help them evaluate a house.
Yeah,
Unfortunate thing is they usually have me do that after they've closed.
after they own it.
And, and they go, well, can't I just, no, you can't. This is a
Yeah.
serious structural problem. At which point in time, that's not in their number for their repair, and it's screwing up their numbers.
Yeah.
So I guess the advice I would offer, if you are looking at things that might be like that,
Yeah,
get some homework done and put that as a contingency in your offer.
that's a huge.
Something,
Oh, right.
but don't allow yourself to get blindsided with something that's gonna be $25,000 you didn't know was coming at you.
Right.
Do you use an
Hence the
inspector,
don't
or do you
I
use
don't.
Matt as to go through it and
Um,
kind of let you know?
Okay.
I used to use an inspector, and he was fantastic. And he would get, when I was doing it myself, because in the beginning I didn't really know, like, I knew roughly, but if the whole thing's falling in, but if there's a cracked foundation and it's not wet because it hasn't been raining, it's kind of nice. And they get in and they'll look at things. Most of the time I don't do 90% of what they find. I'm going to do what I'm going to do anyway. So they're going to find everything. But when you sell the house, there might be something on that list that they found that the homeowner, the new home buyer's inspector is going to find. So it's good to not have surprises. So in the beginning, I think it's a good idea to have an inspector. I think it's a very good idea to have an inspector.
And again, home inspectors come in a lot of flavors. You could be a home inspector with a weekend class.
Right.
So they'll tell you that the faucet works and the outlet doesn't. That doesn't give you the information you need to invest in a house.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
It gives you a good starting point checklist. But do this, go online and Google home inspector's checklist. You can go through yourself, and you should get to know, and there's a bunch, there's a bunch of lists. I don't go into that level of detail because I have a little bit of a fluff factor when I'm doing things. So let's talk about prices of things. So electrical, I have there's basically two things are either between $3,000 and $5,000 and between $5,000 and $7,000, give or take. So if I talk about painting a house is between $3,000 and $5,000. Doing the floors is between $3,000 and $5,000. Well, landscaping doesn't count. Let's call that $1,000. Doing a kitchen is between $3,000 and $5,000. Doing a bathroom is about $2,000. Doing electrical, depending, again, there's all different. If you need to replace all the knob and tube and you need a new service, then it could be $5,000 to $7,000. If you're just putting your receptacles on, you could get away with $500. But when I'm going into a house, especially if it's an older house, I'm gonna err on the higher side of things. Plumbing depends on how many bathrooms, but let's call this $3,000 to $5,000. HVAC $3,000 to $5,000. Roof, I say $5,000 to $7,000. The roof prices, just the price of shingles has gone up something like 30% in the last couple of years. So you can still you have to squeeze and find a good roofer who's going to do it. For example, I have a house out in Rockford. Big, very architectural, stylish, like tons of, what are these called? Peaks? What else? What's the other thing?
Yeah,
Gable?
I don't know.
Gables. Tons of, thank you.
Like Gables, dormers, but I don't know.
I'm gonna ask the architect guy. All kinds of different shapes and sizes on this roof, and it's an old Victorian house. Bought it from an auction for $5,100. Seems like you couldn't go wrong with a $5,100 house. And I'm glad Jeff's not in the room right now because he still has, I think, ill feeling toward me because of it. So we got a quote on that house the average was like $13,000 or $14,000 for this room, and it's a big house, and I ended up getting my guy to do it for I think it was $8,000 or $9,000. So there's a big difference. You know, you don't when you're starting, especially. You know, don't even do 2 or 3. You know, just ask around and constantly. If you know you need a roof, ask everybody. Do you have a roof guy? Do you have a roof guy? Do you have a roof guy? You know, because you're gonna.
Yeah.
As a new person, you're going to need to test them out. It's ideal if you get somebody who's worked with somebody that you know. So, and we had a little conversation about should they be licensed and insured and bonded and all that. Certain cities, they need, in order to get a permit, you need them to be licensed with the city. If you're doing it as the homeowner, then you don't need that. You should do it with the licensed, bonded, insured roofer, especially because it's easy to fall off roofs. Some of the other things you can use your judgment, but you know the official answer is you should always get somebody who's licensed, and that's I could get somebody to do a roof for a fraction of the price if I'm just paying a guy on the weekend to throw a roof up. Can't say I've never done that before. You know, if the numbers don't work, then I have to use my judgment and decide where I'm going to squeeze the pennies. You know, I will always try to keep within the budget, unless I think it's going to affect the sale price of the house. So I don't increase the budget because I think something's a good idea. You know, from a like, oh hey, wouldn't it be cool to do this in the kitchen? Or you know, it's never about that. It's about if I do this, will it justify a higher price, or will I not sell it because of it? You know. So garage, if you're putting, let's say $5,000 to $7,000, siding $5,000 to $7,000, windows $10 million, I don't even know. It's between $200 to $250 per window. So it seems like lately all of mine are between $3,000 and $5,000. Well, I'll put that down there. But you can kind of calculate based on the windows. Structural, totally, no idea. Wet basement, no idea. That's why I try not to do. Sometimes wet basement, you can see that. Here's what's happened before. We've had a wet basement and it's like, oh, you know, big deal. It was just a window that wasn't sealing right. So sometimes it's the simplest things. A lot of times it's hard. If a basement is finished and you've got wet walls and you can't see what's behind, you're not really supposed to touch things. But you know, if I happen to lean on it and crack it a little bit and peek inside, you know, you can tell out there. But avoid these. But I have bought a ton of houses that have wet basements because we've dealt with them enough.
Just out of curiosity, for a grab number, you know, a lot of the houses I've looked at have, you know, they're very old, you know, homes, and they have wood porches that are sagging and terrible and stuff like that. Is there a grab number to kind of shore those up, fix?
The porches?
Yeah, the porches,
$2,000 to $3,000.
railings, and all that kind of little stuff that you gotta
Yeah,
fix
$2,000 to
up.
$3,000.
2 or 3?
Mhm.
Really? Okay.
Unless you're in the historic district, like the one house that we have, and then we have to build it back to what they perceive to be the original style and architecture with all of those materials, and it's gonna take you 4 weeks just to get the approval process.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was nothing wrong with it. It was a stoop that had a tiny little crack out of the corner of it, and they made us rebuild it to a wood porch.
Well, and the thing on
Be very nice for
historic,
somebody.
I'm working with a client in Elgin they're just trying to fix their garage.
Yeah.
And we're into week 6 of approvals for historic stuff. You can't
Historic
afford,
is
you can't afford
horrible.
that kind of time
Right.
when you're flipping.
When we were talking about grant money, there's tons of grant money available, but everything in the historic district is going to be slow.
Well,
So yeah, if it's owner occupied, I think it's brilliant. If you don't mind going and living in the historic district, fixing up a house, you can get a ton of grant money, especially if it's a 2-flat that you're deconverting down to a single family. You can basically fund your entire flip that way. But be ready for headaches. You know, spending nights without hot water and stuff like that. But you know, it's all again. I grew up with that. You know, we always lived in a house that my dad was fixing up, so it wasn't so crazy to me. If I put my kids through that, I don't know what would happen in our household. Probably would not be good. Okay, let's what time is it?
We are at almost 12 to noon. 12 to noon.
about driving. So we have 2 cars that fit 8 people. And do you guys want to drive?
We're gonna be,
We'll just
You're gonna
drive,
drive
'cause I got the credit.
Because, okay,
so I'll
okay.
just take our
So I think
and I'm a driver, not a writer.
okay, yeah, me too. Can you let my dad know we don't need his car?
Oh,
He
sure.
just texted me. Okay, so let's go through that max allowable offer. My scribble notes are so funny to me. And then I was going to go over 2 other things. I'm just going to direct you to the websites. So when you guys talked about how can you within an area, especially if you don't know an area very well, like here, if you're working in the city that you're from and you can find good deals, we're lucky because that's the case for us. But it's usually not the case that you're going to find something that's the super sweet spot in your backyard. I think it's worth looking into it and trying to find that. But if you don't know an area, again, didn't do this in Joliet, highly recommend you do it. You can dig down into by zip code. So zip-code.com. Pull up the demographic information by zip code. So for example, if you know Elgin, you have 3 zip codes. You've got 60124, which is here. The average house price is $310,000. 60123, which is the west side of Elgin, it's $189 something thousand dollars. East side of Elgin, 60120, is about $10,000 less than that. So a city is too broad to really narrow down. Now the next thing you can do is go by neighborhood. So you can go to schooldigger.com. You can find out the demographic of that school's boundary lines. So you can look, if you've got a house, there could be a very big difference between going to one school and going to another school. So, and just it's going to give you a snapshot of the neighborhood that you're looking at. Of course, you can drive around and you can see what it's going to look like. But that's, if you've got 98% of the people on school lunches, then think about who's going to be buying. Is it a buyer or is it a renter? So I look at it in 2 ways too. So I've got houses that I don't want a high free lunch population in a house in the neighborhood that I'm flipping. But I do want that in a rental neighborhood. Because it's a desirable rental neighborhood. So that's we'll cover that. Now let's do a quick. Oh gosh, I thought I maybe wrote out some. There we go. So let's talk about max allowable offer. So if we have, I don't know, notes for this. So if we're looking at, you start with your ARV or your after repair value. So we'll use our rough estimate of $150,000. Then we have, as a percent, and this is a rough estimate, but it's pretty accurate, as a percent of the ARV, we're going to calculate our holding costs and our closing costs. Bless you. So that's going to be 10%. So this would include your realtor fee, this would include things like your insurance, your utilities. Yeah, this would not include your mortgage. So this is assuming you have a cash deal. So that is so dependent on, I'm going to take a side note. You won't be able to get a mortgage on a flip house most of the time. So you would be getting hard money. And so that would be a consideration. So
would this be loan cost though?
No.
I mean, I said mortgage cost, but
I'm not even counting the mortgage or the loan.
cost.
I'm not including the cost of money in there. So that could vary. I'm going to remind me to cover hard money and the basic layout of what hard money lending would look like, because that's what, if you're not using your own money, that's typically what you'd be using. Or best really is to have a line of credit on your house. So if you can get equity into the home that you live in, or get into a home that has equity and live there, then you've got your equity in your home. That's what we do. So we don't have a mortgage on this house, but we have a line of credit, so we can scoop that up and we can go buy, and it's super cheap, and we can pay it down and borrow against it, pay it down, borrow against it. So it's easy in and out. Doing the hard money or any of those when you've got closing costs associated, hands down, best thing is get a line of credit. And typically on your personal home is gonna be the easiest way to get it. You could get a business line of credit once you have a business established. So you'll have people that want to lend against, let's say, your houses that you have free and clear. Most banks are not willing to be in second position anymore. So if you've got, if you've got a house and you've got a mortgage on, you want to get a line of credit, it's your own bank that you've got, then that's a different story. But on the rental properties, they all want to be first position. So cost of money is going to be separate from this. So this is, because that's going to vary. Every person is going to have a different cost of money.
Well, upfront points and then the monthly
Right,
payment.
right. So if you're doing hard money, you might spend a point or 5 points up front,
Right.
and then 10 to 15 or 20%. So, and again, if you can get into it, even if you ramp up slower and you're working with cash, that's always the best. Because you don't want to be spending money. Money is to spend money on money, unless it's to make money. And in the beginning, maybe that means that you're making half as much, but you've got to start somewhere. So for us, we sold business, and that's how we got started. We used that cash, and then we started borrowing a little bit from like his dad and just people at a very low interest rate, and then pay that off. And you get momentum, and then you get into a good cash position, especially when the rentals are starting to pay you. So closing costs, and then what do you want to use for a rehab? So looking at all of these. Well, I just know from my experience that most rehabs are between $30,000 and $50,000. Pick a number. Somebody pick a number. One of yours that you might.
50.
50? Right. That's an easy number. I like it. So this is the actual rehab costs. So for you guys, Christy and Carly, you guys looking at your deals, you can plug it in. What do you expect the ARV to be? When we go to these deals, if you don't have it, put Realtor.com on your phone, the app, because this is not it's not super fancy, but when you're at the house, you can pull up the app and you can click on nearby sold and nearby for sale, and you can get a good idea of what's going on without having to run a bunch of analysis. If I look at a house and there's nothing in the area that's sold, literally nothing, I don't expect that mine's going to be the first one to sell, and I certainly don't expect that it's going to be the first one to sell for a high price. I'm just not going to take that gamble. Doesn't mean that it won't, but I'm not going to take that gamble. So rehab costs, closing costs, what am I forgetting? Oh, profit. So, what do you want your profit to be? And again, this is when you're starting off, maybe you say it's $10,000 because you want to get into it and get going with it. For me, it's between $30,000 and $50,000. Like I probably won't touch a deal if it's not going to be that much, unless I can't find a better deal. If I'm looking and I run numbers like this, and then I go out there and I can't find anything, I'm like, okay, well then I gotta say I'm okay with taking less. Because I'm not doing a deal, I'm making zero profit. So profit, what kind of profit do you guys want to make?
30%.
30. So
I'm flipping it back. I'm doing it backwards.
Yeah.
So do we,
But and this is an interesting. So when I go into a deal, I always want to make I want to make the most profit that I can. But when you think about max allowable offer, so that's what this is. What's the least you would take?
right. 30.
Because
Let's
you
say
wouldn't
30.
possibly, you wouldn't possibly go over this number. This is not your starting number.
Mhm.
But can you put that in a percentage instead of a real dollar, so we're looking at things? Because when you talk about 30 to 50K, is that regardless of the size of the property?
We're talking about what would you be willing to walk away from this deal with?
So 15,000, I mean, that's
So if you
realistic
wanted
for
to-
new people.
Sure.
I think that $15,000 is a realistic number.
Well,
And
10%.
Here's an interesting,
Yeah.
so I have a friend, his name is Andrew Holmes, he's a big real estate flipper investor in Chicago. And I'm more like what you're talking about. For me, I want to see a high percent return. He says, I will do any deal that I can make $20,000 on. He doesn't care if it cost him $300,000 to make $20,000. I told him, I said, I'm not, it's a different philosophy. For me, I consider both. So if you say $15,000,
That's only 10%.
then you could make a high offer. So that would, I'm not saying you start there. Like, so let's play that scenario. I need somebody to do math for me. So I can add zeros, yay. So 15, 10, 13.
The first one's only 10.
What did I miss?
5 and 5 is 10.
13, 14. Let me stand on this side.
230.
I'm nervous trying to do math in
You got
front of
80
you
in
guys.
230.
You got 80 in
0,
expense.
230.
1, 230. Thank you. Oh, that's not right.
You're not supposed to add
You're
those.
supposed to
Don't add
subtract.
Oh my gosh, thank
You're
you.
supposed to subtract.
You got 80.
70.
Now do you see why I had
70.
notes?
70,000.
70.
Can you believe I make money doing this?
Here, put this in.
Gotta go.
Right here.
Okay, what is this? What does this add to?
That's
80.
That's
Thank you.
80.
I'm just gonna ask you guys. I don't.
So the difference is 70.
What's the difference? Thank
70.
you.
There you go.
Now this is all within.
I'm never gonna do this like on the fly because I have nice perfect numbers over here. So your max allowable to make 15 is 70. So don't start there. Like by no means. So now you go and you say, I mean whatever the asking price is, then I generally just without even doing numbers like this,
Yeah.
I'll cut it in half.
Yep.
Because then I know, if I even get a response, I know I'm in the game. More often than not, when I cut it in half, they don't even, yeah.
Yeah, when I realized that I would say that you, Margaret, first started going pro in this area. When I say pro, I mean like being a real estate
I was
professional.
gonna say something bad about me. I know it.
No, it's not bad. It's just a shift in mindset, though. Like when we first started doing this, it was like we would do it like a deal.
Yeah.
So she would make maybe 2 or 3 offers
Mm-hmm.
and throw it out there.
And he would freak out. He's like, "What if they got accepted?"
No. Here's why I wasn't freaking about that. Where I freaked out was when I realized that she was sending out 20 offers,
I didn't tell him though.
and she didn't tell me. and then the realtor's assistant started calling me and saying, "Hey, Margaret needs to sign on this thing here." I'm like, I didn't even know she made an offer. And she's like, "Oh, well, she made 19 other ones too." I'm like, well, what the heck? Because my concern, of course, what goes in my mind is, because I'm a lawyer by trade, what if all 20 accepted the offer?
And what's my answer?
I can't remember.
Then we celebrate because I will.
Celebrate, yeah.
because the offers
it's
I
because the
put
offers
in-
are making so low, and
they
that's
were
what I
so
didn't
low.
realize at the time was that the offer. It's like if they said yes to it, it's like you're gonna make money night and day. And even if you didn't have the money, you present it to a hard money lender, and they're gonna be like, "I'll give you, I'll loan money on that all
Right.
day because the price you're buying. It's with the real estate. I know you talked about this already. It's what you buy it at.
Right.
You buy it at the right price. It doesn't matter. All those numbers in the middle, then you have so much play there.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing is that when you lowball that offer, because you send 20 out, you increase the chances of someone saying yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that we started with 10% because that's it's still a really good return. Remember we talked about our money sitting in the bank isn't savings, but we don't really want to make that. That's our. We would be thrilled. I shouldn't say we don't want to make that because we should be thrilled to make 10%. But now let's look at where we really want to go with it. So let's say that we want to make $50,000. So now you're just gonna, how much more do I need to offer? Or how much less? So if I need to offer $35,000 less here, then that's gonna be your starting point maybe. Or you just cut it in half. So, backing into this number, accounting for the holding costs, accounting for the rehab costs, and this is probably a high number, and this is probably a low number. But at least you have a good solid, hey, I can get 10% return, not be stressed out about it. You'd only pay this much if you can't find a better deal with better numbers. So maybe you find a house that you can make a profit of $15,000 on it, and the ARV is going to be $100,000, then your holding costs are only $10,000, and maybe your rehab's only $20,000. So you can play around with the numbers. If you're talking about getting in, like our quick turn properties, you're not going to have a $50,000 rehab. A $50,000 is going to be my aching gut kind of a deal. So you've got a lot of room to work with, but don't forget the holding costs and the closing costs. Don't forget the rehab, and don't forget the profit at the end of the day. What you are okay with making.
Just one of your next question for you with your experience on this. As I've started to look at several properties and I go through this little exercise and I end up with the maximum offer just looks like ridiculously low. I mean, it's less than half of what they're asking for this thing.
What is your profit?
I was looking at a profit of 20-30%, but also because stuff happens, and as a new investor, I want to have a little bit of margin.
Right.
So if I'm looking at, 20-30% return on these things, all of a sudden I'm looking at offers are gonna be a third or less of what they're asking. Is that even worth offering at that point? Or,
For me, I go back to what is my profit that my minimum profit that I would accept. If I can make 10% versus, like I said, if I can make 10% or not do a deal, I will make 10%.
okay,
But if I'm looking at 5 deals and one is at 50%, which we've done many at that, and then one is at 30%, one's at 10%, I'll probably do the top 2. If I've got enough resources, I'm gonna do all 3 of them.
if you make this ridiculous low offer and it gets summarily rejected, you go back and offer more?
Only up to your max allowable.
Okay.
But you keep increasing until they bite?
Yeah.
If
If you want to.
gets
That's
there.
what's kind of.
On worth, I knew that I needed to come up with my max allowable offer. Because I knew going into it, it was gonna be multiple offers. And I didn't wanna get emotional about it. When they call you and they say, highest and best offer, I'm like, you start thinking, well, I really want it. Or, how can I get into this? And I've done it, and then I go back and I'm like, oh shoot, we're only gonna make $20,000 on that house. But it's okay, we're still making money on it. So, speaking from the experience of the excitement of, especially when it's your first one, you're like, we have a counter offer, they need max allowable, we wanna get this house, we wanna get it going. But know what your number is going into. So with Worth, our max allowable was $50,000. So we put it in at $47,777 with 0 expectation of getting it. And we weren't in the running. They had 2 other offers ahead of us that presumably were higher. But I don't know, maybe they were owner occupied. There could have been reasons why it was less desirable, but they ended up coming to us as 3rd place, and we got the deal because of it. So, but if I had gone in, I guarantee you, tons of people went in at the asking price, because there's this idea that the asking price is somehow the price of the house, but it's not. It's a random starting place. So sometimes they'll throw in offers that are so low that they know they want the bidding war on it. Because as an investor, we would be inclined to offer more. If they say, give me your highest and best. So if they go and they put in a house for $30,000, they know somebody's going to buy it for more than $30,000. And if they put it in at $30,000, they're getting a whole lot more eyeballs on it. So it's a strategy on their side that works. Sometimes.
Not always.
Right.
I just saw a house a couple of weeks ago. It was actually a townhouse, but it had the contingency or whatever that said, highest and best offer by Saturday noon, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? It was back on the market the following week.
Yep.
They got no offers.
So there's some, I don't know, I always wonder if there's some shadiness going on with that, or, they call their brother and say, hey, put an offer in so I can say that we need highest and best offer. There's a lot of them that say that are not really selling.
So the max allowable offer would be $70,000 if your plan was to make 10%.
Yes.
And then would you personally put an offer in then for 35?
I would put an offer in, so my starting point would be the profit I would want to make,
Right.
which would probably be around $50,000. So that's where I would start, and then you play the game of either they don't respond at all, or they respond and they reject, and responding and rejecting is better than not responding at all, because at least they looked at it. So then you go back and you can increase a little bit, or they tell you there's multiple offers, and then you decide, do I go up to my max? How badly do I want this house? If I've got 3 other ones I'm looking at, maybe I'm not so desperate to do it for $15,000.
Multiple offers doesn't always mean that you are not the top
Not at
offer.
all. Not at all.
So how do you figure out?
Which is ours. We kept our offer exactly what it was when they told us that.
How do you figure out your after repair value? I mean, are you going off the comps in the area? I mean,
Yes.
if you're buying in
Yeah.
a depreciated area, though, your comps are going to be low, right?
Yeah, then you don't buy there.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we go out and look at these houses, you want to look at what have the houses actually sold for. So listing houses is not a comp. If a house is listed for $200,000, that doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is houses that have actually sold. So you want to look at a house, look at the area. Really, even if you go a mile out, it's not so much a comp. The issue with the ARV even if you build the most beautiful home, if they don't have comps, the comps will determine what the appraised value is going to be. The appraised value is going to determine what the loan can be, and the loan determines if they can buy your house or not. So when we're looking at the ARV, it's more about what can I actually sell and close this house for than what's this house worth. So our house on Liberty, it's worth more than what we're calling the ARV because there's some speculation there. You know, it's on a busier street, but there's a house that sold on Chicago Street for $215,000. That's not as nice as the house that we have. Now, since I've looked, there's 2 or 3 more that have shown up. One for $180,000, another one for $200,000. Yeah. But I'm, you know, in my numbers, I'm going to be a little bit conservative with this.
When you're going to make a bunch of multiple offers, you have to have earnest money with these things.
Only when it's accepted.
Only when it's accepted?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm writing the check. Do I write this check with this thing, with this offer, and then it just, I don't worry about the check because it doesn't get called?
You don't give them
until-
you don't give them a check until they accept your offer.
Oh, okay, all right, so not so bad, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
I took an image of the check
Yeah.
and then put over
Yeah.
top of it and pasted on.
Yeah.
That we
And-
don't keep burning through checks.
Right,
Okay.
you make a copy of it and you add it, you attach it to your offer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So you can make a copy of your check and just, and you put it attached to your offer,
Okay,
so that it's just a copy of it.
And that's, you know, that's, you don't have to give the earnest check with the offer. But when you talk about what's going to make your offer more desirable. So if you come in with cash, if you can close fast, having a big earnest check, and that's even better, is to actually have it attached there. They know you're a serious buyer. Because there's a bunch of tire kickers out there. You don't want to be perceived as a tire kicker for your realtor or for the bankers. Like there's banks there's realtors that we work with that know they've worked with us before we bought houses. They're gonna, you guys can speak from a realtor's perspective, but when you have a buyer and you're working with the seller, I don't know like what legally you're allowed to say or not, but if you've worked with a seller before, or worked with a buyer and you're talking to your seller and you say, I've closed 5 deals with these, that matters. You know, that's gonna make you bubble up to the top. So there's things that you can do to be, if you've got 5 offers at the exact same price, you wanna do the things that will make your offer more likely to be accepted. Yeah. You guys hungry? Any questions real quick before we grab lunch? Then, so
Timing on that, time is money too. So what is the typical turnaround time on
on
a scenario like that?
Okay, so the rough timeline, so you're gonna go out and look for a house, and you better make an offer that day or within 2 days, or the houses will be gone. If they're a good deal. Then as quick as you can close, realistically with title, 2 to 3 weeks is probably the soonest you could close. So I will write in not more than a month out for the closing date. Because if it's further out than that, then, you know, they're sitting on it, they want it sold.
So do you say like you took 10 days? Is that 10 business days?
Usually we do 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
But now there's a little bit of, it takes time for them to respond to us. I do a month because then by the time we actually have an accepted offer, it might be 3 weeks. And then, you know, there's some little details
Right.
like that. And then the rehab might take 6 weeks. And then I get it listed and then we hopefully get it under contract within 2 weeks. And then however long on the buyer side, when we're selling and we have a buyer, usually that's a little bit longer because it's an owner occupied, you know, they got drama or whatever.
They've got HUD financing.
Right. So here's how the rest of the day is gonna look. We're gonna go upstairs and there's sandwiches
Everything's,
upstairs.
there are sandwiches upstairs, and I just wanna make, just a comment on the bus tour piece.
Yes.
So I will be the time taker, so.
The time Nazi. She already
I'm
told
gonna
me.
be the time Nazi,
She's
so.
yelling at us.
Do we have a list of the addresses we're going to?
Yes, and
Yeah,
there's,
we
and
give
we
you
have the
guys.
whole, we have, I will be giving you some, while you guys are upstairs, I'll be pulling together, some documents for you to bring with you. So we have the comp sheets for some of the houses that we're gonna look at the very end, and then.
Actually, okay, there's a
Oh,
slight change. So we have to meet the realtor at Slate at 12:30 and we're gonna see the
Well, that's only
That's in
15 minutes
15
from now.
Oh, all right, we're not gonna meet him there at 12:30.
Yeah.
We're gonna meet him there
I thought
first.
we were meeting at 1, that's why.
We're gonna meet him there first at 1 o'clock, and I will let him know.
Okay, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock.
So we're gonna see the first, what do we have, 4 houses or 3 houses in that list? 4. So we have 4 houses that are not ours, not under contract, houses that are the types of houses that we would look at. So we're gonna run into those with the realtor, then we're gonna go look at a bunch of houses that we own. We've got, I think we're going to 5. 5? Okay. So 5 rehabs that we're doing, that we have in various stages of rehab.
So we have travel time included, we have about 5 minutes for parking, getting out to the front, and then inside the house, we're probably gonna have about a very sharp 15 minutes, I'll give a 5-minute warning. So,
The lights flicker.
yeah, I'll give a 5-minute warning.
And what we do, when we get to the house, we can all just gather in the backyard, and then I'll talk through a little bit about the details of that house, and then I'll let you guys walk around and see things for yourselves. We have 2 big SUVs that we can fit 8 people in each of them. So, and then I know John and Linda, because of the crutches, are gonna drive separate, so I'll make sure that you have all of the addresses for everyone.
Yeah, I need that.
Could you guys
And-
take maybe 1 or 2 more people?
I'll-
or-
Yeah, we're gonna take
Oh,
three.
good.
Oh, okay.
That's good.
Oh, then
Hang
we'll
on,
be
so
very
that I can give you guys the papers. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you guys is Margaret is on social media, so her Twitter handle is
Bye, Margaret.
her Twitter handle is @FlipChickMillionaire. And I encourage you guys, if you are on Twitter, like take pictures while we're out there of the houses, mention your experience, just interact. We'll be sure to tweet you back, and then also feel free to post up to the Flip Chick Facebook wall as well. And if you haven't connected with Margaret on LinkedIn, please make sure to do so. Because we're gonna continue, there's gonna be a lot more coming in terms from a social content perspective. That's kind of the strategy that I'm working on, which will be good information for you guys to follow, whether it's LinkedIn or the Facebook page or the Twitter. Twitter's awesome because there's lots of interesting articles. Like we printed out an article that I found on Forbes for you guys. And that's the kind of content that we will continue to deliver. So, anyways, head on
All
upstairs.
right,
It's
enjoy
lunch.
lunch.